Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Last week we dived into Moq and AutoMocker, so if you haven't seen that, I'm sure there's links somewhere to last week's stream floating around on the YouTubes and the Twitches. Tonight, going to dive back into the AutoMocker library. Last week I kind of teased some of the source generator stuff that's coming and that it already has, specifically the source generator that builds out unit tests for you for the argument nulls on your constructors. So if you haven't seen that, go check out the past video. It's pretty cool. Andrew, welcome. Tonight I am going to be joined by one of my mods, a colleague and friend, Benjamin, who unfortunately found, I won't say a bug as much as an unimplemented feature. And so I conned him into starting work on doing it, and then I conned him into joining me on the stream tonight to keep going on it, because I kind of feel like this will be a good example of kind of source generators, how to use them. Maybe not necessarily a start from scratch, but we're gonna at least work on them and figure out how to make them work. So welcome everyone, Benjamin. Hi.
Hello, hello.
Anything fancy you want to say?
Nope,
Okay, cool.
we
Okay.
made it.
Yeah.
The infamous stream.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're normally the one floating in the background on the chat for everybody, so this will be good.
There.
Quick note for anybody on the material design and XAML, I did spin a 5.1 milestone. I started kicking things out. My intent is to migrate a couple of my own projects to the 5.0 preview NuGet packages, test it, and ship it. So I've done now one project, and it went fairly smoothly. So yeah, I'm gonna do a couple more just to make sure I'm not missing anything too obvious, because I'm sure I'm gonna anger some people. So Benjamin, I'm gonna let you, well, actually, before we start, so I've pulled his branch. So for those people who want to follow along at home, let's see, copy link to branch, and people will note that is a Get Kraken link. So if you click it, it's going to prompt you for Get Kraken, but you have Get Kraken, it'll like point you to the repo and bring you to the branch and all the cool stuff, which I think is pretty awesome. Okay, there's that. There's that. I feel like there was something else I was gonna say. Oh yeah. So I pulled your branch and then I immediately tried to build it and then was very unhappy that it doesn't build, because why did you send me something that doesn't work? But secretly,
Whoa, it works on my machine.
well, said every developer at least once in their lives. So this is actually a good one to call out, because this is a problem that is self-inflicted to me that I think some people may potentially run into. It's not overly likely, but so the AutoMocker library is using centralized package management, meaning all of our versions for our packages live here. One of the wonderful things about this feature is it insists that you do package source mapping. And if I go here and do manage NuGet packages, we'll quickly see the problem. If I hit the little gear here, you'll note I immediately have all these sources. And most people probably don't have these. They probably have NuGet.org is, I think, the default one. And the problem being is centralized package management wants you to actually do package mapping so that it knows where to resolve these things from, i.e. add a NuGet config. And I have done that. Problem is I added a NuGet config here on this other branch, on this PR that unfortunately Adam just got back recently and hasn't merged yet. So that's disappointing. So real quick, we're going to just come over here and I'm going to just go snipe that file real quick. So magical keyboard shortcut Alt-O opens up the repository in Windows Explorer. You can also do File, Open in File Manager, but I just do that. And then I go back here, and then I go here, and I go paste. Oh, turns out if you switch branches,
Evan, don't you want to do some cherry pick showing off the gate cracking, cherry
oh,
pick
okay.
no commit?
Oh, that's fine. Okay, yeah, good point. Okay, we'll cherry pick this side. Cherry pick. Do you want to immediately commit the changes? No. Merge conflicts. Mark is resolved because I really could care less. Yeah, delete this file. I don't care. So unstage, stage, uh, let's see, NuGet.
That would be a cool Gitkraken feature, though. Reach into a branch and grab a file without checking it out.
It would be cool if it would let you right click on a file and cherry pick file. Now I realize that like there's a lot of ways that goes wrong real quick. Okay, next question. Am I gonna have push permissions?
Not to my what?
Well, not to your remote.
Oh,
But you know
here,
what
I
you
can
can
fix
hold
that.
on. Well, no, there's a cheap way to do this. Open a PR real quick.
Okay.
Open a PR and leave the box checked to allow contributors to push back to your fork. Oh, actually, hang on. Before you do that, I'm curious. Can I do it? Start pull request.
Origin.
Yeah, so hang on. I'm gonna see if I can do this. Continue editing on GitHub. See, I don't think it'll
That
let.
would seem weird because then you
Yeah,
can't
I
click
don't
the
think.
checkbox.
Yeah, okay, it doesn't give me the checkbox. I was gonna say that'd be a heck of a thing. So apparently you have to actually make it. If let me know when that PR opens, or actually I'll probably see it in my lovely little Git Kraken right above your head.
Done.
And my pull request section a little bigger. Collapse, collapse. I want a refresh button. Where's my? How do I refresh?
You can just fetch and it. I think when you do a fetch, it refreshes automatically.
Oh, is that it?
I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think.
Fetch. Oh, look at that. Look at boom, boom, boom. Okay, and then push. Oh, that's so dirty. I love that. I love that.
That's
Okay,
a hack.
sweet. I now have push permissions to your repository. Well, I have push permissions to this branch in your repository. It is a kind of a cheap way to scope somebody's permissions down
I
without like
haven't thought about using this way before, I have to say.
collaborating by opening a PR and checking a box. I mean, it is limited to where you can do this. Okay. But regardless, I think now, if I rebuild, now that I have a NuGet config in place, I think we'll be. I don't know if you're watching chat, Andrew. Hi, Benjamin. I thought Copilot was Kevin's only friend. He talks a lot to him or her. Me and Copilot.
Sometimes I think Kevin's my co-pilot. I just ask him questions, and all of a sudden the perfect answers come back.
I wouldn't say perfect. My answers are maybe on par with Copilot. But
You
yes,
give better explanations than Copilot gives.
absolutely. But Copilot set that bar pretty low. Okay, so we've got this going. Okay, walk me through what we've done. Where am I going? Because you've done a bit of work here already. Where should
I
we?
haven't done too much work, but under the Moq.AutoMock generator example XUnit tests,
This guy here.
um,
Okay,
yep, I set a string tests. This was just me kind of proving that there was a problem. I haven't actually cleaned this up, but there's a wait,
guy here.
string test, yes. And it calls the controller string, type of controller string,
Got it.
which
So
is
we
under
should.
example, and that has a
Sorry, I'm cleaning up.
NRT parameter. Yeah, feel free. This was proof of concept.
Got it. Right.
Um, and so
Oh, it's
that's
interesting that
simple.
you have string. Is that intentional?
I was kind of trying to prove one that the first one doesn't.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's
We
probably
do
the
we
harder
do
case.
generate a test for the first one, and we don't generate a test for the second one.
Got it.
Um, was kind of the thinking.
Got it. Okay. Because right now, if we look at what this guy's generating, I'm guessing we have a problem. Because I'm
And to be clear, I've never done generators before, so this is all fresh.
excellent.
In the
Well,
past 24-hour fresh.
hey, in a couple hours you will be more than just fresh, and it will be perfectly make sense and everything. So this guy, the source generator did gen these things out, and the problem here, in case it's not obvious to people, the way that this constructor test is intended to be used is that the system under test, in this case controller, oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. This guy, controller string, is it anticipates the system under test being something that's like dependency injected, and so it only is going to have things that a DI container would resolve. And sometimes you have to do this kind of partial method thing to inject extra stuff. But for the most part, that's the intent. And what you've subtly broken is this type of constructor was never a use case it was designed to fulfill. So it kind of can.
I was being lazy. I'm creating a little library thing where I'm creating a service that gets added to the DI, and it has about 8 parameters of potential options of how to register with GitHub, in fact. And I was like, do I want to write all these tests? No. Let's have this running for me. And then I was like, why does it keep failing? And this is what I tracked down.
Right, because right now the source generator blindly gens an argument null test for each one of these. And one of these it should gen the test for, and one of these it shouldn't. And I think what we're saying is we don't want it to generate a test if the parameter has a default value of null on there. So whether it's
What do you think if it's just nullable? Like, is there ever a case where if it's nullable, I think the expectation, at least in my opinion, is that you will handle it. If it's a nullable parameter coming in, you're expecting that the the
okay.
end user will handle it. I don't even think it has to be default. Um,
That is a fair point. If it's declared nullable, you wouldn't expect it to throw an argument null exception. Though that does mean that we have to be more intelligent, right? So there's a couple, I guess that is really the only case if it is nullable. But how I think we still want to handle this case here for the case where somebody has nullability turned off, right? Because there's nothing.
that's true as well.
Because
Totally agree.
yeah, because somebody could be in this situation, and I think we also want to acknowledge that. So I think
Totally
there's
agree.
2 cases we want to handle, but I think both of them are reasonable to do. One of them
For that
slightly
other
easier
case,
than the
though,
other.
I'm happy to rewrite an analyzer that says turn on nullability.
Well, and to be fair, this is the first time anybody's requested this. The other thing that people really want this source generator to do is act on more than just constructors, right?
On methods and stuff.
People want to be able to specify a method name or similar. And in this case, like this stuff up here, it's okay if we use magic strings because or name of or similar because it's still going to be compiler checked. Okay, so that's the expectation. The failure case here is that we've got 2 things here. If I run the tests, I assume I'm in a failing state for these tests. Yeah?
Yeah, I don't think I got it working yet.
Perfect. I love it. If I run the test.
If I did, this is a surprise to me because it wasn't working on my machine.
That's fair. Hey, Izzy. So we are working on expanding the AutoMocker's unit test generator to be a little bit smarter. Right now, it blindly generates unit tests for all parameters, and we want it to not generate if the parameter is if null is expected for the parameter, basically. Okay, so good. So this test fails, but it also fails because it shouldn't exist. So the expectation is this test just doesn't show up. Right? So that kind of makes sense. Did you write any unit tests over this yet? No, it doesn't look like it.
No, I just wrote the generation test. I hadn't totally found my way around the library, so I was playing around with how it pass the. I think we decided offline. It's best to pass in. Basically, you can opt in to this functionality because you had some existing functionality otherwise. So I was
Yeah.
working on passing an enum through the attribute that would then toggle this.
Yeah.
And I got, I think, that far.
So we have something like this where we can then do.
It should actually be there. It's called.
Yep. It's called skip nullable
behavior.
reference types right now, but I think I might want to rename this enum value to something like skip parameters that are expected to be null or something.
Yeah. And there might be two, honestly, if one's like nullable reference types and one's equals null default value.
I don't know if
There
people are.
might be a both and one or the other.
I'm trying to imagine the use case where somebody wants one but not the other. Like I can see people wanting feature on, feature off, but I'm struggling to imagine where somebody would, right? Because what we're positing is, I guess, because of the optional parameter, right? We're positing the case where somebody wants the test for foo or test name, but not the other. And I don't know if they would actually want that, right? Test
With a
name.
Punnett square, there's what, three options. So a string that doesn't have a default parameter, a not a nullable string that does have a default parameter, and a nullable string that doesn't. Yeah, I can't think of one.
Yeah, I suspect they.
I think I agree with you.
Yeah, I think they only want to on or off. But let's. You know what? I'm gonna leave the enum name. We'll think on it. The only thing I don't like is calling it nullable reference types seems to imply that it will only work in that one case, and I want to handle the case where nullable reference types is disabled. Just because we do target old enough frameworks that people might care. Okay, so we got that. So you did good there already. You've already added that. So in the test generator target class. Okay, so let's go through the source generator kind of layout real quick and figure out where we want to start this. So the starting place for a source generator comes with having a class that has the generator attribute and deriving from iSource generator. This does also assume that you have appropriately referenced the needed NuGet packages. So you must do that so that you have these types, but then bippity boppity boo, yeah. The implementation for iSource generator is really simple. There's initialize, execute. This used to even be a single method until recently when I'm trying to remember what they called it. This is like source generators v2, and there was a name for it so that they could do incremental source generators. But the idea here is that during initialize, we register for the syntax receiver where we want to handle parsing, and then the actual execution of parsing all of our stuff. And the typical recommendation, and this source generator kind of doesn't follow best practices, so we'll take this with a bit of a grain of salt, is you typically want to parse the C# code because you're acting on the syntax tree of your source code, parse that into an object model, and separate out the parsing into an object model from taking that object model and generating source code from it. Generally, you want those two steps to be distinct, is typically what you want. And this mostly handles it ish, right? So the syntax receiver is what we registered up on. And specifically, this is where we start doing the interesting stuff. And it's very, 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 very important the order of operations that we check for things, right? So it checks for a class declaration syntax because you want to do the cheapest check first and the most expensive check last. So we first check if it's a class declaration syntax because most syntax nodes aren't going to be class declarations. And so we just move on, right? Immediately filter everything else out. Find the stuff, find the attribute, and then specifically come down and find the constructor test attribute. And I will point out that you'll note the constructor test attribute, we hunt this guy by magic strings. That is good in this case. Because you don't necessarily want your source generator to have a hard reference back to your other library.
I
So
was going to ask, how is it doing that? Where's that declared?
this constructor test attribute.
Yeah.
So this is
So it's
just
literally just magic string. Got it.
literally a magic string. But the attribute itself does exist over here, right?
Yeah.
Because when we build up our NuGet package, this is actually probably worth showing off. NuGet package explorer, open package from online feed. we go and look here, because at the end of the day, you typically want it set up. You'll note we have lib, which anybody who references the NuGet package, the lib folder is the DLLs that your project is then going to automatically reference based upon your target framework. Most people are probably going to land in the net standard case. But then we have an analyzer specifically for C#, because if hypothetically, because this is .NET, somebody could use it on a different language, and in that case, our analyzer will not help you. This is a C# only helper. And that's where it lands. So ultimately, that's the separation of concerns there.
Is it actually considered an analyzer if it's a generator?
Yes. Because they both come from the same SDK.
Got it.
But they do get, the compiler effectively loads them the same way, but when they get executed and what they do is slightly different. And it's not uncommon to be able to have, like in our case, we've got this test generator project, which it feels like a weird name, but it is generating tests, so it works, right? But you can put all of your generators and all of your analyzers into a single assembly, and then it's going the compiler is going to load up your assembly and pull all that stuff out, which does make it mildly painful to debug, because things like MS Build like to stay running and hold on to that DLL, which is good for performance, horrible for debug. But I like this. So you put the enum in, good default member on the enum. I like the name of the enum, the member name we may work on, but overall that works well. This is actually not needed. I'm trying to decide if we want it or not.
Yeah, I was trying to decide more. I was coming from my EF mind of setting default numbers and whatnot, and that was just
Yeah, I
was in habit of other projects that had gotten refactored.
Yeah, I might nuke it for now, but it's not bad. There's also probably, while we're here, it's probably worth also doing a
Overloaded constructor.
overloaded constructor. Just boom, and we'll come back and add. As you can see, we've been bad on some of our documentation. We do have the analyzer forcing us to write it. Doesn't mean we wrote good docs. Okay, so we got that. We got that. So you built all of that up, and then you did come in here and you did track down where the source generator is pulling at least the first attribute off of it. Right? So it's pulling this attribute here.
Yep.
Right? So it yanks the attribute, and then
That's where I think I got it, but I wasn't really confident, and I didn't know how to debug this. So this was blind, putting things on a screen and hoping.
yeah, I'm looking here to see.
And then I set it at the bottom in the target class.
Set it at the bottom. Right, passing it through here. Because I was looking to see where this was. Because this is pulling off the symbol. Because the hard part with source generators is you have to account for how many different ways the C# language allows somebody to specify things, which is obnoxious to say the least. I am surprised. Well, let's go here. So there's a couple ways we can go through and debug this. Option 1, we have, why are all my dependencies yelling at me? I'm gonna just relaunch Visual Studio. I have to believe that NuGet config made it lose its mind. There's a handful of files that Visual Studio is really bad at reloading on, and NuGet config is one of them. Not necessarily edits, but creation or deletion. It's like something holds on to some past memories, and it then proceeds to have nightmares and forgets how to load
Updating
projects.
analyzers as well.
Yeah.
Visual Studio just does not ever want to let up your analyzers.
Well, I think a lot of it comes from it's I suspect related to the caching for the performance. Let's see here. Okay, so we got that there. Now my things aren't horrible. So we can grab this. So we do have tests down here. So we can come down here and do this. Oh, why didn't you point out that this file wasn't named properly? Okay, there, fix that.
I hadn't gotten to finding that file yet.
Oh, excellent. So we have the example projects up here, which are like your end-to-end tests. And then we've got individual unit tests down here because end-to-end tests are really bad at like catching failure cases and that kind of thing. So a lot of these unit tests are specifically around grabbing failure cases, but it does test some of the happy path generation stuff. So we may want to just write ourselves a test here to be able to run. And that might be one of the easiest ways to debug this. The nice part, so for doing these um, generator things, Microsoft does put out a specific package that gives you some of this boilerplate.
Hmm.
Because you could do a lot of it yourself because Roslin's open source, but dear heavens, don't. Like that sounds miserable. So there, I believe there's also like an X unit one and probably N unit. I don't remember, but they've got a couple of these things out here. Oh, real quick, did you see the Test Anywhere announcement earlier?
I did not.
Oh, okay. Side tangent, side tangent, side tangent. Um, Microsoft has released a new test runner. Um,
To compete with MS Test?
I don't know if it's compete as much as augment. There's pros and cons to it. So this guy here. Okay, so link incoming for those at home. So there's this guy here. Test adapter, blah blah blah. And you go through and you add this little guy here, right? Enable MS Test Runner. That's the key, right? And there's a meta level NuGet package that brings in all the normal stuff. Because before you would always bring in like all of these individual packages, and that was kind of a pain in the neck. Now there's
Where they were
one,
brought in through dependencies.
yeah, now there's just kind of one level meta package that you can reference called MS Test. Boom, bang, done, huzzah! Right, you're off to the races. Um, but the new testable one, you'll note you can do this with it. So you can actually compile the tests and get out this nice little thingy that can run because unit tests are just an application, right? And
This
normally
might
there's like
save me
a
some code. I've been creating GitHub Action lately to build once and then share across multiple pipelines, and tests are one of the cases where it gets to be difficult.
yeah, so the prime purpose though of this is because normally like MS Test uses reflection to find your test classes and your test methods and all that jazz. And it's not horribly bad, but it is reflection and that comes with a hit. This thing here, you can do things like AOT and trimming. Now, is
How
that
small can you get your test down to?
like is that important to a lot of people? Perhaps not, right? So you'll note there's one less process and one less process hop when running tests because compared to .NET tests. Now, is one less process and one less process hop important to most people? Probably not, right? Most people, that level of performance on their tests isn't that big of a deal. Some people have like 16,000 tests in their thing and they might see a nice bump. So
The fact that Microsoft could see a 3 times performance improvement with 4 times less memory, that's a big number.
yes, yes. Like this is one of the I felt like oftentimes people like normally people would ask, "Hey, which testing framework should I go with?" And it was usually like, usually I tell people to default to XUnit because in my opinion it's one of the more easily extendable ones. But I usually would say any of the big 3, XUnit, NUnit, and MS Test, they're more or less at feature parity-ish with some exceptions in different areas and that kind of thing. I was like, but for the most part, they'll all do what you need. This this is a big deal. And I believe XUnit 3 that they've teased for like years at this point is supposed to have something similar, but this is, I think, the first time MS Test has been first to a party rather than last. So
Yeah.
this is pretty cool. Um, yeah, so I haven't gone through a ton of this stuff yet, but this thing dropped, I believe today. Yeah, January 24th. So if anybody's watching this video later, this we're at time of recording, it's January 24th, 2024. This just came out. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Anyway, complete side tangent. Anyway, back to testing. I just saw MS Test Adapter and that
I
triggered my
sometimes
memory.
hate when these things come out though, because I'm like, I see something like that and I'm like, I gotta switch every project I've ever written over to this new latest feature. It's one of my biggest faults, but
Shiny. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. But if you're about to start a new test project, maybe it's time. Maybe it's worth giving it a shot. Play with it. Because
It's
I
gonna be
mean,
hard to pull me away from XUnit. It's either that or I wait for XUnit to bring along. I do like my XUnit.
oh, is he January 25th? Okay, okay. Sorry. Depending on where you are in the world, it may be January 25th already. I think when this blog post came out, it was probably January 24th in most of the world because this came out. I was sent the leak earlier this morning, so it was early-ish when it dropped. Okay, that was all of that. Silly o'clock in the morning. Yeah, yeah, Izzy, isn't it like 4 or 5 for you or something like that? Okay. Let's see. So we want to go through. Let's give ourselves a test to play with. I think that's step one, and we'll go from there. All right, because I think that's probably the easiest way. Generation with uh, not value type parameter. Parameter. Change this parameter with default value 5 a.m. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely silly o'clock. I almost had a 6:30 a.m. meeting this morning, and thank goodness it got rescheduled. Does not generate test. Yeah, that is very fair. Okay, so we're gonna have a controller. We're gonna do string. I think we can just do this here if I remember right, because I don't think the generated code has nullable reference types turned on. I don't believe. I think by default it's off. And so we expect this to occur.
Is that intentional or is that just
I think that's somewhat an artifact of the built-in framework stuff. I think if I remember right, there's a way to turn it on in here in these source generators. Yeah, because you can build up the compilation options. And so I believe inside of the compilation options, there's something around one of these nullable context options. I think this is it. Yeah, so you can like something like this um, gets you turned on to be able to have nullable reference type stuff enabled. We just haven't necessarily turned it on in here yet. We may, because you'll note this is still in my code land. We may have to give ourselves a protected member or something to be able to toggle that. But we'll start here because this is the first easy failure case, right? So that's namespace, controller, string null. This test should fail. Right? Red green testing. Also great old shelf. Type namespace or end of definition. What? I don't remember doing something stupid. Oh, I did do something stupid. Okay. Too many things open. Run test.
I think one of the most convincing arguments to get like AR goggles is so I can have as many monitors as I want. I can just boom, 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 boom.
And then you'll note here, this is also one of the nice things that they do set up is they give you like reasonable asserts, right? So they actually like the built-in library did not match diff shown, right? So here was what is expected, and it renders it with like a git diff. So for people who are familiar with seeing that, speaking of git diffs, video coming out. I think I'm almost done with it. Probably tomorrow on Cloud Patches. So they are cool. They are awesome. I love it. So we want to say this test pass and this test not suck. So, okay. So now that we've got that, I believe what we can do is we can come back into... we probably want to just grab it here, right? I think. And now we can just debug the test. And this is probably the easiest way to debug source generators. You will note the other way of doing this is with I left myself a hook in one of these. I think it's here. You can uncomment this line as well. So if you actually want to test it like inside of a CS proj type situation, you turn on debugger launch, it prompts Visual Studio, you attach to it, and away you go. And then you're actually inside of the process
That
that
is
has loaded
helpful.
it.
I saw that commented out, but I wasn't trying to use it.
Yeah, so
Good to know.
this would be if we wanted to debug these guys up here. But in general, the tests, the unit tests make our life much easier. So we just start there. Right? Because most of the time you can get yourself away with doing this. Okay, so let's see what you got. So this guy here, so this got us our attribute that we can see here. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in it. Great, we're going to skip that for now. So you went after the named arguments, which in this case there are none. Real quick, did I actually set my test up properly? See, I didn't set my test up properly and you didn't yell at me. Why didn't you yell at me? Okay, so step
When
one.
everything's orange, it's a little harder for me to read.
That's
I don't have my color.
I know. That's one of the things. There's theoretically support for this though now, right? Because they added the cool stuff for like regex and whatnot, where it can parse the strings out for you. So in theory, something is that is now within reach. Like the groundwork has been
That'd be
laid.
cool.
It's not
That'd be
there.
cool.
It would be very slick. There would have to be probably some way to denote that I expect this to be a C# snippet or something. Okay, I was going to go to the generator test, and I was just going to poach what we...
Markdown style syntax, some raw string literals with some postfix.
Yep,
Raw string literals have to be on their own line. Seems to set up kind of perfectly.
I agree. Okay, so there's that. So now I think your named arguments. I think where your setup is going to fail is when we do it without the named arguments. Like I think we can make this work for a named argument, and then I think it's going to probably fall apart. So named arguments now has a length of 1. Huzzah. Right? And I don't know if you can see that, but that does have values. So okay. Wow. Let's see. Is your Boolean correct? False. So that's a problem. I'm going to do this in...
Oopsies.
Yeah, well, you said you hadn't tested it yet. So I mean, if you wrote a source or a source generator and you got it right the first time without any effort, I was going to be a little shocked, because I think only people who've built a ton of these can actually pull that kind of stuff off. Okay, so let's do named argument down here. Okay, so because you went value, and the problem is that is not kind error. Well, that's not useful. Typed constant is not array, use value property. Oh, well, that kind of makes sense. Is null true, kind error. I have a feeling this means we have messed something up, but I'm not clear as to what. So I'm going to just take this, because sometimes there's wisdom in just doing this. Okay, that seems fine. Where is my... Looking to see if I had, we've got, curious where it's getting its global using from. Oh, it's not getting global uses because it's here. Wait a minute. Oh, that's probably because we're in the middle of a debug session. Let's stop this. Well, hold on before we get too carried away. Go back. Let's go back and do a little investigativeness on here. So if we go
I also changed the CS proj reference to the test generator project because I wasn't able to add I was struggling to add the enum to the attribute otherwise.
Oh,
So that might be messing you up too.
yeah, that's probably part of the problem. So the comment earlier about how you don't want a hard reference between these, that is very plausible.
So it wasn't
Wait,
in
so
there,
how
right? It
did you...
was in Moq.AutoMock. I removed theirs on the test generator reference. It had output to item type to analyzer and reference output assembly false, and I
Oh,
killed that on
yeah.
line. What line are we on? Line
Yeah.
40?
I was gonna go back here and grab it. Yeah, that line we actually want.
I'd love to learn how to reference my enum then.
Well, I shall demonstrate. So let's go here and that's not it. It was this line,
Line
wasn't it?
41. Can't
Why
see
do I
line
not?
numbers, but
I know. Why do I not have line numbers turned? I've installed too many updates. Stand by. Line numbers should be... I don't understand why line numbers are not enabled for all languages by default. That feels like something that should just always be there.
so what did I break? Just so I'm
So
aware of what I broke.
so in this case, when you're bringing in a project, um, by deleting these, you're making it set up as a project to project reference. So if you were to run a NuGet or a .NET pack on this, it's going to think, okay, we're going to have assembly A reference assembly B. And that's not actually what we want. Specifically, this whole idea of reference the output assembly. Like, we want this guy to know about the analyzer project for the purposes of packing, but we don't want it to pack up this test generator project because Moq.AutoMock, we really don't want it to have any dependencies. Right now, we take we take a couple, like on non-blocking collection and value tuple, and on Moq, obviously, those are acceptable dependencies. And personally, if we could get rid of non-blocking, that'd be even cooler. But don't want to rewrite that. So we want as few dependencies as possible so that we aren't reliant on other frameworks or similar. But we still want .NET Pack to know that, hey, when we .NET Pack this project, treat this guy here as an analyzer and do the needful for us. Right? So that's part of how this and this get us all the way in.
Got it, and that explains why I couldn't see my enum when I was setting it.
Correct. Well, and that's also why um, this guy here, did you add a reference? How is he able to see this enum?
No,
Where is
because it's in that class. It's in that so it's down right there. Yeah.
Oh, so here's the thing is we don't want this enum here. We want this enum up here.
Got it. See, I was
So
thinking you wanted in that other one and then just reference it in the attribute.
no, other way around because we want people to be able to leverage um to this is the DLL that they're going to be referencing. So anything we want people to type into their test projects needs to be in this assembly, which I think is perfectly fine. But now you are quickly going to see, we now have different problem, right? Is now this guy wants to reference it. And you'll note this is part of why we ended up with, and I'll turn off my breakpoint so you can see it. This
Magical strings.
this magical string here. And it's to some degree. No, Copilot. No. I think what we're gonna do is we're just gonna break this guy out because I want to see. I want to see what this comes through as. And then we're just gonna comment this for the moment. Because normally I just do it with my immediate window, but you know what? We're gonna do this since that didn't compile before. And then we'll go here, we'll debug. Nope. What did I do? Oh, so I didn't. Oh, actually. Hey, Copilot, do it for me. Dang it. Trigger inline suggestion.
I've been surprisingly, that's funny. I've been surprisingly unimpressed with Copilot's ability to generate summaries. I've tried it quite a few times, and I have rarely found that it writes it for me. It's really good at writing comments above, but not actually summaries and filling out all the things.
Maybe that's an indication that most people don't do it, and therefore its testing data is crap. Or its training data is crap. Okay, so that got us to nowhere. So I would like to do that. Nope. Copy. Go to our immediate, paste. Right? So that got us to there. We do dot value. That gets us. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so we can see we've got a typed construct. The fact that the kind shows error is concerning to me. I'm wondering if that indicates that the thing fails to account for compilation. Because this does run async. Let's see. I kind of want to check this and see at the point it does this thing actually compile? Verify diagnostics. With inheritance applied. I'm trying to look at where this guy runs.
Are you thinking the updated things for it to reference just aren't actually there when it's running tests? It's just executing old stuff?
I'm thinking there is a compilation issue and I just can't see it. It should be fine. I don't see the failure. Like, it's not obvious to me where the failure is. Because this code should work. And I mean, we can test this in a slightly different way as well.
The first thing it hits is syntax receiver before it hits the generator, right?
Generator registers the syntax receiver. So the first thing it hits is the
Could it be
initialize.
that I added something into the source generator that is causing something with the syntax receiver?
No, because it's parsing. And because remember, sometimes the source generator runs and the code that's being fed in isn't in a compilable state, right? Because the code fed into source generators isn't actually expected to work. Because sometimes you're writing code knowing that a source generator is going to fill in some blanks that actually make the final result compile. So the source generator can't make the assumption that the input coming in is in a compilable state. And that's where it gets weird, right? So .NET new, how about mkdir gen test, right? .NET new xunit, boom. That is not. That's what I wanted. Thank you very much. Okay, launch. We're just gonna plug this in real quick and see what I'm messing up on. because I think that should compile. Oh, but I can't just plug this in because I want to test a new enum that's not, I'd have to build a package. Come back to that idea. Okay, come back to that idea. Okay, so immediate window, because I sort of was expecting that we should be getting a value from that. Let's go look at this guy.
You might be having too high confidence in what I wrote.
I mean, that okay, fair. Let's double check. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. What did you change here? That's just the moving of a paren. Okay, great.
Yep.
Oh, oh, you pulled out the constructor test attribute.
That was me.
Ah. Ah.
I can't see it clearly if you had done that already.
I had. I had. It's just probably not very obvious. Okay, okay, okay.
Oh, there in that if. I think I see it now.
So this guy here. So one of the things that's worth noting is when you're looking at it, and I'm gonna try to not butcher my terminology here, is when viewing the source code, there is the grammatical form where it's just kind of looking at individual tokens, and then there's like the type resolved form, right? The grammatical form is cheap to inspect because we're just looking at the tokens around us and we're not really concerned. But when you say, hey, I want to resolve a type, that requires like some work to happen. So we going and pulling out this type here, this is something that we only do once we've gotten all the way down into here. So I think this is actually probably where we want to grab this. Let's go back up here because this is probably going to get us a lot closer. Okay.
Come on, Kevin. That should have been the first place you look. What did I write?
Well, yeah. In retrospect, not horrible. Okay, so we get into here, get our type info, and we step through, and I think we just fall into here. All right, so now target type gives us our type info. So this guy here, the class declaration, is looking at the attribute list, selecting many, and is pulling out the type info where the name of the attribute is constructor test attribute. Right? So it's intentionally hunting things. So in theory, if somebody else made a constructor test attribute, we would match on that, and that would potentially be bad. Right? We should, in theory, maybe test on more than just the type name. Maybe we should test on the namespace as well. Because if they make one with the same name in the same namespace, they deserve what they get. In this case, this could be accidental. So maybe worth doing. And then this get target type, this is where the magical bit is actually coming from, because this is now processing the attribute syntax to go through and pull out the type that is in the arguments list. So I think
Is this these days kind of generated automatically when you set up a base generator, or is this stuff that one has to know in depth to be able to write?
more the latter, which is and it gets harder every time the C# team introduces new syntax. This is why when new versions of C# drop, very often analyzers or source generators don't play nice with new syntax, because this type of stuff goes belly up. Jared, always good to see you. Welcome. So this is actually what's pulling that guy out. And I think this is explicitly looking for a type of expression. And in your case, because this is not going to be a type of, I think what we can do here, okay, so we're just going to kill execution. I think what we can do is we can reach across here. And I think we can just return a bool, right? So rather than get target type, get, what are we going to call it? Skip nullable parameters. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so this guy's going to come through here, and then we're going to need to pull apart the argument list. And we are probably going to need to look at this and figure out what this expression is. Now, one of the really, 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 really handy things here, sharplab.io. This be gold, and that also be tiny. Okay. If we go back to our test, right, so we can come in here. This is the stuff we're trying to parse, right? So we come here, we paste in our code. And rather than IL, because it's going to freak out, we can go syntax tree. And you'll start to notice something real quick. And actually, just to make this thing happy, I'm going to, just to make SharpLab stop screaming at me, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do this. And now SharpLabs can,
So if C#11 had actually implemented what I would have thought would have been amazing, the parameter null checking feature, would that have meant you would have had to account for a third case of?
yes, 100% yes. Well, it depends, because I don't know if we would have been.
Because I think when that compiles out, it compiles out to an argument null exception dot throw if null, essentially.
Right. And so that's where things get interesting, because if they add new syntax that you want to handle, you do have to go and change your generator or analyzer. And that is somewhat problematic. So, but the nice part here, right, is we can come in here and we can start to parse this thing parse this thing out, because you'll note there's an attribute list. Oh, look, there's an attribute. Oh, what is in the attribute? Oh, there's an arguments list. This should look really familiar to the method we were just looking at, right? So anybody who wants to play along at home. What are the world are we doing here? We are building or extending a source generator. So right now we've got a source generator, Jared, that builds tests to do argument null tests. And we want it to be tolerant of things that are expected to be null and not do dumb stuff.
Out of curiosity, if you copy the whole link, will they actually share your code?
Yeah, that's a good point. It will. It absolutely will. I'm guessing you want the whole.
Oh, I don't think it does.
Is it not?
Unless someone else is just. Is it just me?
Hang on. This is a new private session. Oh,
I'll try one more time.
if you're worried about the thing on the right, it defaults to collapsed. Click on something on the left to make it expand. Don't see your code with the link. Works on my box. Even in a private.
Says ever developer ever.
Even in a private one.
Oh,
it does. No code on the left. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, that's boring.
I don't know what you're copying then. Like, what are they sending through that link? But
yeah. Oh, did I just lose it? That's going to be real disappointing. Hang on. We can do this. I can go here.
if only they have links that actually work.
I can go here. Hang on. Let's see. There's the enum.
Oh, you could create a gist. It looks like there's a button at the top, and you have to hook it into GitHub, baby, and that's maybe how you do it.
That could be. And I got to move this to the end because I copied them in the wrong order to make this work. Okay. And then I need something like using system. But you need to turn caps lock off to make that play nice. And there we go. Now we're back into a happy state. Okay. UUID. Okay. But the important thing here is what we expect to see inside of this. So inside of the argument list, we're expecting to see an attribute argument. We're expecting its expression in this particular instance to be a simple member access expression. And then from there, we can look at the name to get the identifier, but we may or may not want to try to pull that apart. Because I think what we probably want to do is just look at this and go for the constant value. That's probably what we want to pull out. Because in this case, one of the nice parts, because we're shipping the generator with the library, we can kind of make the assumption that those two things are going to be in sync. If they weren't going to be in sync, who knows? World goes crazy. But I think what we can do here is just this. So we can sort of parse, because this one here was, so you'll note this one was attribute argument operation type of expression, and I think we want simple member access expression is a much better one.
What's the difference between those for one that doesn't know what those mean?
Everything in the C# language has been codified. So this is meta level of programming. So kind of like when you do reflection, how a property info is an object representing all of the stuff about a property. Think of every little token in the C# language as having an object type that reflects it. So this is the compiler's view of your world. So if we do simple member access expression, and I am very aware that this doesn't work, right? This guy here should be, right? So this guy here, simple member access expression, we probably need his base type. Member access expression, I'm guessing. Let's see here, because this guy, give me your namespace. We do syntax. Give me your fully qualified thingy, my bobber. What are they? So, pro tip, what I did here is just from past experience, knowing that all of these things are obnoxiously in the same place, it means that if you F12 on them and get to this file, you can hit a drop down and here's a list. Because quite often the actual derived type is something hidden from you, and the base type is what you actually want to act on. So I suspect member access expression syntax. That sounds like what I want.
I'm
Gimme.
surprised they had a parameter literally called green.
Yeah. And so this guy here, member access expression, first or default. And so in this case, our else case is going to be false. And in this case, let's see, member access expression, spelling mildly counts. And then I think what we saw is we can go here and then I think look at operation and constant value. I think is what we want to do. Assuming operation. Operator token. Ooh, this may be another case where it gets awkward because we don't have good access to it. I don't really want to parse that across. Raw kind language is missing. I kind of want to fix my spelling. Thank you. I understand I can't spell. I get it. Show off. This kind is missing. I think field reference and going there. Operator token. Field reference operation. Operator token. We might need to just look at what this comes back as. Let's see. Var foo gets. And then we do this. We do this. We do this. We do this. Boom. Okay, then we come in here. And this guy here is currently just returning back the type. We might need to break this up so that it does a little more. But for now, we're just going to do this. Because right now, this is doing all of this work to do a first or default just to get this for a big if condition. But what might end up needing to happen is we might need this to return more than just null, right? Like we might want to say, if we get inside this if block, go ahead and return back, the attribute itself, and then inside of here do the pull apart or something to that effect. But for now, we do this. Let's go here and let's see what comes back out of this. Uh-oh, Mountain Dew's almost empty. Don't worry, I brought backup. Okay, so let's go in here and let's see what we get back. So, oh, that was stupid of me. Of course it matched, but I wanted to look at the whole thing, darn it.
Kevin, I'm excited for someday your kids are going to make you like a Rube Goldberg machine for serving up Mountain Dew, and it'll be fantastic.
I completely agree that that would be fantastic. Let's see. This is... I just want this. Dereference of possibly null. Yeah, I agree that it's possibly null. And I'm going to tell you to shut up and do it anyway. Because in this unit test, it is not possible to have anything but that. Because I control the sum total of all of the code being fed into this source generator. Okay, there. Okay, so we want to look at foo. How we would like to see go locals, and we'll expand this out. And let us look. I need to find a way to make this font bigger.
There's a lot in here.
Yes, there is. And the unfortunate part is a lot of this is derived classes, not always exactly what we're after. So,
are you able to hide that in your locals? Search depth, are you able to reduce that with that?
For to lower this?
Would that actually change like how many derived classes it goes by? Does it actually know, or does not have a concept of that
No,
at this point in time?
I think this is the search depth for local variables, not necessarily how deep this is going to expand itself out. Because in our case here, we've got so we get back the expression, but I'm looking for where this thing actually is going to have its value stored. Because the operator token, I don't know if this actually has what we seek. No. This thing here has the span. But this is what so that's the parent though. Where do I find identifier name syntax, test generator behavior? That looks like what I want. Syntax token, identifier token, behavior, right? Give me the right-hand side of the equation. I am wondering if I don't have... Go up to the parent real quick and then work our way down, because I'm wondering if maybe I grabbed too early. Member access. No, because this shows skip nullable reference types. This has it. Right? Name.
The pros and cons of that new feature that they actually like show useful things for value for an object.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Well, hold on. The name of
Wait,
this,
I saw it there.
the
Go
name
down a little
X
bit. Right there.
thing I'm highlighted
Parent.
on.
No, two
Well,
down.
parent is going to take us up a level because parent is showing us the entire attribute argument syntax, which you can see is behavior equals and then the whole thing. We really only want to pull out the right hand side of that.
Kind text. I'm assuming kind text is what it's pulling out partially for to display.
Correct. And I think okay, let's flatten this up real quick. Let's flatten this up. Because I think what that's showing me is I want to actually be inside of name. Um because name then has skip noble reference type. I think what I want to do is I want to pull out from foo. I think I want to check for the identifier name syntax. Let me just check here real quick. Identifier name, skip noble reference types. This guy. Trying to
Is that different
decide.
than the expression that's two up? Hmm.
Yeah, because the
So
expression.
that's what's on. That's the member that's on.
Yeah, which is why I think I want to go down a level. Because at the point, because this is one of the nice parts about Sharp Labs. Like I don't know if you can see when I'm hovering here. If I do this, right, when I have this selected on the right, it actually highlights the relevant section of the C# on the left. So that so when we're talking about this simple member access expression, we're literally only considering the things to the right hand side of the equals. So I'm also now curious what happens if we do this, right? Because this now is the same thing. So I think what we want to do is we want to go after I think we want to check the identifier name. I'm just worried that we may need to filter this further, right? To make sure that we actually grab which one we're on. Because of the way that you can specify attributes with their parameters out of order, where you do like the default constructor and then specify them. But for now, I think in the interest of getting this working, we go here and we say identifier. I think we just go after the name of foo. I think is the target because that gets us the identifier name. Because this guy up here, right? This just did type of expression and grab the type back. So if we do foo.name, and then this guy here should give us, what was it? It was underneath name. Uh, we could hunt it by, yes, value. I feel like we could resolve the type, but do we care? Like that's the question: is do we care about the type? I don't know if we do. I
You're
don't
thinking just grab it on magic string again?
grab it on magic string because we will know if we get a string that doesn't match any of ours, and we can just say nah. I am.
And if we're in the same attribute, it's unlikely. And if we also check the member that's on, aka the type whatever, I forget what we called it, that'd give a good double check that if you're going that in depth.
Yeah, because that's the question: is how much do you want to inspect? I think that's probably okay. Name identifier value. I want to go name identifier dot value. And actually, what I could probably just do is value text. Oh, do we care if somebody specifies the enum with an integer? No, no. I think that is
What if they're
abridged,
using it for EF?
but
That seems like the most likely case.
but I don't. But they would. So specifically, let's be clear. What I'm. Do we care if somebody does something weird, like
Like saying that's one in this
yeah,
case.
doing?
Yeah.
Do we care to support that use case? Nah.
I don't think so. If you're doing that, you're already asking for hard stuff, and you can go write your own tests.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, ugh. Okay.
Also, what's this thing of floating thing on the top? Is that a feature?
Yeah, isn't that cool? It shows you the context of where you're at.
What feature is that?
I don't remember. It was one. So bear in mind, I'm running Preview Visual Studio. So some of the stuff that's on, I've quickly learned. I have features in Visual Studio by running previews that don't exist in regular one. Like for example, my options window appears to be crashing. I don't think stable Visual Studio does
That's a
that.
good feature.
Why Visual Studio? uh, but yes, it showed up as defaulted on one of the and Visual Studio. Um,
Sorry about that.
it showed up on one of the latest previews as being on, which I thought it was rather slick. But even if you aren't on preview, check the preview features under your options, because sometimes what they do is they release the feature, and initially they release the feature and only the preview build gets it. And then eventually they release it into the full version, but it's off and behind a feature flag. And then when it's finally ready, then they turn it all the way on.
Oh, I'm still on 3.0 of my preview. Maybe I have to upgrade to 4.0.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we go here. And for reference, um, let's see, first or default is, because we're going to do member, I'm just going to do member expression. That seems, and actually, we could just do right here, we could go name dot identifier dot value text equals. I mean, why break this out when I can do it all in one simple property pattern match?
We're probably gonna have to use that more times, right? Would it be worth putting that as a constant in that same constant class?
We are definitely going to be doing that. Let's see. Hold on. What is this thing squawking about? A property subpattern requires a reference to the property or field to be matched. Oh. Oh, that's right. No, no, no. I have this right.
Name.
I just
Name, I think.
no. The colon goes there.
Ah.
So we do this, and this just becomes a return, right? So for the, and then we don't need that anymore. We can literally just, if we have this, so this will fall apart if we add more members to the enum, whatever, right? Error checking is not something I'm interested in at the moment.
Or when we inevitably change that member name.
Correct. Well, so all of these magic strings should end up in these this
Constant
constant
files.
file that we have here, right? So they should all go there. But make it work, make it right, make it fast. This is the make it work phase. Okay, so skip nullable parameters, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to move this guy inside of here, because if we don't get a target type, we don't care about the other things, right? Like we don't have a target class to play with. And in this case here, this is pushing through. I'm just wondering if I break out this guy here, if I should have it return more than this. I'm kind of thinking I do this and this in the interest of simplicity, right?
Good old tuples.
Yeah. This is going to be unhappy with me.
One thing I don't like about them sometimes when you return them out, you have to kind of know that they're being returned out because they're sometimes hard to discover or more difficult to discover.
Yeah, and I'm noticing this thing is going to get obnoxious because it's going to complain about the null case. And I don't really, because I want to be able to leverage the first or default. So, okay, so what do we actually need out of this guy? Is name type symbol. I think what we should do is we should return back, because before we were just returning back the type. I think what we
Is
do,
this where it's worth just breaking the whole thing out and just doing this separately,
well,
returning A and
yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. Uh, 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 because it was clearly hard code for somebody to read it before, so we're gonna like not do that mess. We'll do that, and that'll get us to there. And then this will get us into here, and then get target type attribute. All right, so this will go here. That will go there, and then we need to handle the what I want to do is this, and what I want to do is I want to invert the if statement like that, and then I want to put the diagnostic inside of here, and then I want to early return. Okay, Copilot, you want to show off? Do the rest for me. Ha. See? Can't even figure it out. Let's see. So, bool, skip nullable parameters. Boom. Okay, and then I think down here, I think what we're going to do here is just rename this to skip nullable parameters. Boom. And then this becomes skip nullable parameters. Okay, so that goes there. That goes like that. That goes like that. Everyone's happy.
I assume whatever we eventually name our thing to, we'll probably just want to rename all to that.
Yeah, but I think this gets us through to here. This gets us through to here. This now gets this generated up properly, right? So this is all on the parsing side, and I would argue the parsing side is the hard side to actually implement, right? In general, my opinion is that's where, oh wow, we can just keep collapsing. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Mwah,
So
mwah.
clean.
Well, I don't know if I'd call that deeply nested with a link statement clean, but each his own. Okay, so this gets us to here. So now we need to go to the actual generation side of the fence, right? Because it's all well and good to have this, but at some point we now need to take that target
So all I
class.
did was line 46 on here. I basically just had skip. This might be dumb,
So
but
you also used element at, which gives me great pause. Don't use
yeah,
don't use element at
what
on an indexable collection.
well, I was doing it because of nullability, because parameters, and I hadn't processed how I want to do that yet, so I was spinning.
Oh, I see. So you were gotcha. Okay, so now we have to know if the oh, so we might have one more parsing thing to do real quick. Because
Yeah,
that's if the setting's on, but we also need on the parsing side is the parameter nullable, right?
yeah. So that's kind of where I stopped. That's where you caught me.
Ah, perfect. Okay, so here we find the constructor. It pulls the parameters out, and I think right here, we literally just come in here, and I think what we probably want is public bool is nullable, right? For now, we're just going to go with get. And I think we'll just run our test again and catch it right here because I think we can probably detect it inside of here. I think. But let's look at that. Or actually, hang on. We can probably our Sharp Labs thing if we go here. Let's see. Parameter list, parameter. Let's see here. Do you have a nice easy way of doing it? Parameter default. So if it has a default, which I think is the case that we're testing currently, right? So actually, that's a good point. If it has a default, we skip, regardless of what the default is.
Um, mm,
Because you
Only
wouldn't.
if the default is null, because you could have a non-nullable type with a default, and you could pass a null.
But the only way that happens is if it's a value, because defaults have to be compile time constants.
That's true.
The only compile time constant of a reference type is null, I believe.
Can you not do a default string?
Oh,
String.empty?
yes, nope. Thank you. I stand corrected. Good example. But in that case, would you want to test for an argument null exception?
If my string is not a nullable string, I argue that I would, because
Okay.
I can, if I have nullable off, I can still force in,
Got it. Oh,
I can force null into there
right. So
in
you're
that
saying
case.
you're saying in this case you would still want the test to fire.
Don't you think? I
I
would
can
think.
I can accept that. I can accept that. So we want to check for a default with a value of null literal.
And if this is a value type instead of a reference type,
At the top, one test at a time. One test at a time.
then those definitely have defaults that aren't null.
So let's go here. So let's see. So if symbol uh, default has explicit default value. Well, that looks real convenient to me. Uh,
Wow, I am impressed that whoever has to write out this whenever they write a new feature must be a pain, but also this is kind of beautiful in its own convoluted way.
the compiler is complex, but you are correct. There is an elegance to it. Explicit default value. What is your type?
Like
Uh,
the fact that I'm not doing like blind string comparisons and pulling question marks off really surprised me, because that's what I thought I would be doing.
let's see. Is nullable equals. I think. I think we do this, but let's run it and find out. Let's see. The name A does not exist. Well, that sounds like somebody messed up. The name attribute exists, though. Rinse, repeat. Okay, so we come in here. Symbol has explicit default value. Okay, okay. We got that. Okay, perfect. So now we go over to here. So we're gonna do this, right? I think. I'm looking to see how we do parameters. Yeah, so because this was looking to see which parameter we were on, nullable parameter index. So you were pulling the nullable parameter index out. Why is test parameters nullable? Just out of curiosity.
You're thinking there should be a default
Oh,
list.
no, I don't like that as much, but I mean, we can just do this. All right, so rather than doing this, we can do is nullable. And we got to handle the case. So if the setting's on and the parameter is nullable, we'll continue. We won't generate the test. Our unit test goes green, and the peasants rejoice. No! Okay. Well, that didn't quite work. Mismatch in the number of diagnostics returned. Expected 0,
It's just an
actually.
off by one error. Just do plus plus.
Let's see. The name test generation behavior does not exist in the current context. Okay. Now we're seeing the compilation problem. That explains a little bit from before, right? Test generation behavior. Is that not what we called it? Oh, I bet you I
But it's
know
a
what.
reference problem. It's not a.
No, it's a namespace problem
Oh.
because it was in the test project before. Yeah. So because the tests as we set it up we only included the AutoMock namespace, which is all anyone is expected to have to include. The only exception is if you write your own custom resolver, and then you got to include the resolver namespace. I win!
Wow.
I win!
I'm impressed.
Okay. Immediately commit. Proof of working. Commit, push. Hoorah! So now the test goes. Okay, so we've got that much working. Actually, before we get too carried away, let's just run all the tests. Just to make sure we didn't foob. Okay, good. Like I don't think we broke anything else, but let's just make sure we didn't break anything.
You never know.
Okay, so what were the other cases we wanted to test? Let's build some tests for those. We'll do the whole test driven development thing because it's working well. It's working well. Okay. So parameter with I heard empty string, right?
Sure.
Empty string does generate test, right? So we expect this guy here to actually generate a test. So I
have to
have to actually go get the test that I expect it to generate because I expect it to actually build, something. So we expect the actual output of this guy to look more like this. So given this, we probably shouldn't have this thing named token, should we? Let's change this. String name.
Oh, Kevin, you gave me build errors.
Give you build errors. What? What did I give
You had two constructor test classes within the XUnit one.
Oops. Yeah. If you want to push it, that's fine. Let's see, with null, because this should be with null, I think string. Is it because it gens the test name based on the type, not the parameter name, I believe.
I guess it would be camel case.
Yeah, which is mildly obnoxious.
It looks weird.
Yeah, it looks weird and it looks wrong. With null.
Is this you set up or this just default behavior?
What do you mean?
The naming, the generation in this case, the generating the method names.
This is my own naming scheme, and I'm very happy. Like, if we want to change it, because these are just generated things, we could fix this. Like,
yeah,
we could totally change it.
It kind of makes sense though. It looks weird, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and it did make this sweeping assumption that these things would. Like, we're going to run into a bit of an issue with your example test above, because AutoMocker is populating based on type. It's not going to differentiate parameters
between
by name.
String and.
Yeah, so it's going to have a bit of an issue there. Now, you could work around it, right? Like, rather than so for example, up here in this guy, rather than doing use, because use is going to key on type, you would have to basically register a custom resolver to know the difference.
Also, why was that needed? Because I was surprised. I don't know why I was surprised, but I was surprised that I needed to do that, and we couldn't get that based off of the
it's
parameters.
So the reason it's needed is because and there's an open discussion. Feedback welcome. AutoMocker, when you ask it for a type, all it does is walk through its list of resolvers to see if it knows how to make the type. So, one, it looks in its cache to see, have I already made one of these things? If so, use that. Is the type looking for AutoMocker? If so, return myself. Is it an array? In which case, I'll do some array magic stuff. Is it looking for the disposable one? This is kind of an internal thing for iDisposable support, so do that. Check for enumerable, right? Check for lazy, check for func, check for cancellation token. And then the very last one is see if Moq can resolve it, right? Like this thing here is one of the.
That's the catch-all.
This is the catch-all, and the problem is none of these match string. And there's been a debate about should we have a resolver for strings? Should we have a resolver for GUIDs? Right? There's types like that where it's like, should we?
Just to simplify it.
And the problem is because most of the time people are using this as kind of like a lightweight DI container for spinning their stuff up, it's like no DI container resolves those types for you. Now, it's very trivial to write a resolver, right? Because the resolver interface is literally just this resolve method, right? So if you wrote a string resolver inside of here, you would literally just go if context requested type equals type of string, return insert the string here that I want, right? Done. No thinking. And you're off to the races. Or same thing with GUID. You could do GUID, new GUID, and you're done, right? But it's one of those we've left it as a thing. But there's also been a debate about, well, maybe we should write the resolver for people and include it in the library, and then they can inject it where they want it.
So you basically have pre-written it, but it's not actually being
It's not actually
brought
in
in.
the list of resolvers. I also have a thought that right now we build this this default list of resolvers in the constructor as an instance. I have also wondered if perhaps we should have a static list that is built that this thing the instance makes a copy of the static list when it's started up. That way if people want to set it once with their pre-canned list of resolvers in whatever order they want, they can
You
do it
don't take the
once.
hit twice.
Yeah, they can do it once statically, and then you don't have to do it every single time. Because if you have one that you want to inject for every one of your unit tests, you have to add it every time you do an AutoMock resolver. Versus if there was a static. Now, most people just work around it by writing a static factory and you're done, right? It's like, should we have that or should people write it if they need it? Like, So that's the reason this is here is because none of the resolvers will match on string. So
Difficult questions to ask.
yeah, anytime you have a type that a resolver won't match, you have to do a use or a with in order to make it match. Okay, so I'm gonna make this name, and then we're going to run this test, which it should fail now. Okay, it did. Look at the diff. Okay, so what did it do that I got wrong? It's probably somewhat of a naming thing. Constructors
versus just
null
string.
string. Bro, okay, so I left the word controller in there and I shouldn't have. So this should be like this. This should be like this. Show me here.
Why does that? Did the previous ones have controller?
The previous one wasn't generating a test, so I copied this from an earlier one.
Got it.
So there's that, and then let's see, controller constructor with null string. So I have controller there to go and delete, and controller there to go and delete. Okay. So here I have controller here that shouldn't be here, and controller here that shouldn't be here. I guess it should have made sense. I just chased the. Okay. Okay, so controller string must declare a body because it is not marked as abstract extern or I.
Are you missing a paren somewhere? Looks like maybe. No. Oh, do you need to put a slash in front of your quotes? Escape them?
Oh, that is a good point. Let me look. Quite possibly. Uh, it's because it's treating
It's a
it
single quote.
as a single quote. You know what? While we're here, let's just do this, right? And we'll. Okay, so that goes like that, and then
The thing I hate about these is getting raw string literals to be set up right the first time is sometimes
a pain in the neck.
Yeah, and I don't know why it's so hard, but it really discourages me from using them.
Oh, this is. Oh,
Oh, because you guys are still on .NET 6.
yeah, that's why I didn't do this before. Okay, fine. Undo, undo, undo. Well,
Is that a difficult upgrade?
so it is not a difficult upgrade. However, the test projects could be upgraded. I'll say this. The generator has to stay on net standard 2.0, otherwise MS Build can't load you. So that's important.
All generators?
Yeah, and analyzers.
That's
I think if you're willing to require VS 2022, you can be net standard 2.1. I don't remember. Basically,
hmm,
MS Build sets a minimum target framework that you have to adhere to in order for it to load. Because if you
that's
target,
really interesting. I thought it was just how compatible you want it to be. I didn't realize it was.
well, it is kind of how compatible, but how compatible with which version of MS Build? Because it has to load your DLL up. So it provides the restrictions on what you're allowed to do. I'll just do that. And that'll probably fix that compile issue. So the test project could be moved to net 8. That is a problem. Okay, so
I'd almost say their escape might be clearer than four quotes.
going like this.
Yeah.
But that's not
Can you not escape in a? Oh no,
not
it's a literal.
yeah, that's the problem. You are
I
correct.
didn't look up.
You are correct. It's kind of ugly, but at least in this case, it's at least just trying to prove that the test gets generated. Okay, I think the next case we wanted to cover was nullable types being a new. See, this is not bad once you get the
We
first
have to
one
run
done.
our test now, Kevin.
It's green. I just ran it.
Oh, I didn't even see that. You were too fast.
See? Boom. Test pass.
You are ahead of me. I was so focused on counting quotes.
Boom. See? That test now works. Okay. So we wanted to handle nullable types as well, right? So the next test we want is actually going to be closer to this one, right? We
Yes.
want to do if it's a nullable string, so parameter
You
with
could default value nullable string. You can't. It's kind of maybe unnecessary, but
well, because we want this, right, and we don't want this to
yeah,
gen a test, right? That's so.
I agree.
Let's do this. I think this is actually a compile error on this one now. Let me look because I think it's going to be unhappy about the. No, it's just unhappy about the diff.
What about the? Oh wait,
I want to make
I was
sure.
gonna say, what is it gonna generate without the type in the name? So if you have a string and a string question mark,
So I want to be real explicit about it. Sorry, say that again. If you have a string and a string question mark,
is it gonna change the name? Since could you come up with? Would you end up with potentially duplicate generated method names for your tests?
oh, I don't know about duplicates because it's smart enough to handle that, but whether it puts a question mark in the test name is a good question. Answer: it does not.
So even if you have multiple parameters that are all strings, it won't
Well,
generate.
we haven't done the multiple. We haven't done that test yet with those.
Got it.
I know the generator does fail already. If you have a class that takes like two parameters of the same type, it falls apart. And I don't know how we handle that yet. Because AutoMocker is what's expected to populate those parameters. I guess as long as you don't expect them to ever be different, you're okay.
What if you had the parameter name as well as the type?
Oh, because you're thinking of the duplicate test problem? That would help disambiguate. That would help disambiguate.
I think AutoMocker knows about can figure out the parameter name as well as the parameter type.
This is the type. I don't know if it does that's the wrong thing. Wrong window. I don't, because the resolver, AutoMocker doesn't get the parameter name. It when it's asked for a type, because quite often what you're calling is AutoMocker.get, and get oftentimes will just have the type passed in. So for example, the caller could just do this, and all you're going to get is the type. Now we could because we're generating these tests, there's nothing stopping us from adding stuff.
You would.
Or similar. Yeah, like we could do things like that. But let's handle this case next, because this is now,
We'll hit it when we hit it.
yeah.
Okay.
So let's deal with this one, because this one's generating a test. So what we want to do is we want to know about, and I think we can just catch it in the parameter class, can't we? Right.
And the diff is fine now. It's just a compiler.
No, the diff is generating a test.
Got it.
And we don't want
it shouldn't be generating a test.
Correct. Yeah. So, and I think we can grab that where we grab the parameter. Right? So I think inside of here we can just grab it right there, and we can debug our way to victory and win. On my chat. There we go. Okay. Okay, so now the question is, so this guy clearly knows the type is string question.
Nullable annotation right there.
Okay, so so that will tell us if nullability is enabled, but how do we tell if the type is nullable?
Oh, is that not
look at
nullable
that. We
annotation
can just
on the thing?
Well, so
You're thinking that one's whether
oh, you're right.
nullability is enabled? I was thinking that's actually like there's a question mark on it.
Oh, that's a good point. So that or symbol nullable annotation is annotated. Intentionally using is pattern matching, because I would not be shocked if we needed to do an or at some point, but I think there's only the 3 cases. Yeah. Known true, known false, unknown.
And we want to generate, oh wait, what are the cases for none? It comes from, it's disabled, or it comes from C# 7.3 or earlier.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, right. These two are, if nullable reference types are enabled, is it string question mark or just non-nullable string, right? But if nullable annotations are off, or it's an older framework, or any of the cases that it breaks on, they call it none, but I usually call it unknown. Is we just have no idea whether this thing's nullable or not. You should probably panic and freak out and worry. And let's see. Expected test state sources. Huh?
Wow. Why do we expect 2?
I don't know. I'm going to turn that off. I wonder if I broke something when I turned that on. Yeah, why would it expect 2? I literally added 1 thing to the collection. Expected 2 source generator application. Expected test state sources. What? I'm very, very confused. Test state. Did I accidentally delete something? No? Because this guy here is, so this is a dumb property, just to be clear. It makes writing the test look friendly, but it's a dumb property. Right? Like 2 sets add 2. It's like the setters being called multiple times. Right? Because it's saying to match update document, but test state sources with test state generated sources contains two documents.
What are documents? Is that the things that you're passing into that state function or state
Correct.
property?
Document is the way that Roslyn thinks of like your C# file. Like when
Got
you
it.
compile a normal project, each file becomes its own document.
So file, not class. So if you have multiple classes in a single file, it'd still be a document.
Correct. Correct. I'm going to restart Visual Studio because I have a thinking suspicion that something has cached something and it hates me. So we're just going to not do that.
That was a weird error though for a caching error. It seems like.
It is, but I've just learned that I don't trust anything with source analyzers to not be cached.
Fair enough.
As the old saying go, cache, French failure point here. Or French word for failure point here.
I hadn't heard of that before, but that's good.
I heard it somewhere at one point and I laughed, so I've kept it. It's also like the word, because my father used to work for the postal service, and he always informed us that the word fragile means bounce off of wall. For anybody in America who has dealt with the postal service, that is funny. For everyone else, just assume it means that sometimes packages arrive very beat up.
How often do you use that in your day-to-day language?
Fragile? Only when describing other people's code. Hopefully my code isn't fragile. Okay, so something about this input has gone awry.
Bluey.
And I'm curious why, how, huh? Um, we're just gonna do this. I don't know if you're
Why do
watching.
you assign back
Uh, sorry. What?
to foo? Oh, did you just do that?
Yeah. I just wanna inspect this thing. I like the comment in chat. When it sticks to the wall, that is the sign that it is ready. Not wrong. Not wrong.
A new Visual Studio feature I am liking is that when you get to the end of a method, you can actually see the return in your autos.
Yes. Yes. That came out. Well,
It wasn't too long ago.
well, the previews had it for I think close to like 9 months.
Yeah. The only comment I have about it is it's sometimes hard to find because they have some magical name that ends with like returns
Mm-hmm.
that it is.
Wait. Huh? I'm not. I. Wait. What? Huh? I'm confused.
Seeing a lot of zeros.
Yeah, that's what I'm confused about. Okay, there's the generated sources. Right? This is. Oh, item 1, item 2. Hang on. Why do we have. Oh, this is a tuple.
Yeah, there's still only one item in there.
Right. Okay, so that I'm okay with. Generated sources has the file name and the source text. So this method returns a tuple. Generated sources, source file collection is a collection of value tuples. Again, I will not claim this API is great because yuck, right? But file name content, okay, great, like that. Okay, so that makes sense.
I love that they used a list in this case, a list of tuples.
And here is the source, right? Same thing. I mean, normally I'd be looking at these things here and freaking out about them, but I'm not that.
Generated.
Yeah. I mean, the \0 gives me a bit of pause, but I think that's more around like an index that gets slapped on it to disambiguate. So, and the code itself seems as expected. So, okay. So when I step over you, operation not operation not valid due to the current state. So it's crashing and giving me a really bad error. Okay. Okay. So
Well, what's our error here?
you can't access explicit default value
Oh, if it's
property
not there.
if it doesn't have one. So else if, right? So which is, thank you, Copilot. See, now you're being useful. There. See, something like that. I think that okay. Okay. That makes a lot more sense. I was very, very confused by that.
You could probably use a ternary operator there.
Very possible. Mismatch. The annotation for nullable reference type should only be used when nullable annotate. Now I go put that sucker back. See. Found nullable enable. There we go. Okay, so that now works properly as we would expect. And we're going to put this back to be await. Now that okay, so pro tip, run with the debugger attached and make sure your analyze or your source generator isn't just crashing. Okay, so we've handled that case. What was another case we wanted to handle?
I don't know if we need to cover it, but if you have both, I think our logic is good enough. But if you have both a nullable type and a default variable, and I think the other one, nullable value types, maybe?
Okay. One thing I just realized I want to add to our tests real quick is I would like to do. I'm going to change this test here just to make sure it gets covered. I this shouldn't break based on what we saw before,
Uh,
but I want to make sure that that we have,
use a constructor.
yeah. Okay, good. Still passes. I didn't think
Also, we wanted to do one where we didn't pass in behavior, because didn't we have a case somewhere where when we didn't set behavior, it was crashing at some point? That might have been on way back when, but
if we don't set it.
wasn't it in our syntax receiver at one point when we ran the generator is crashing or something like that?
Well,
I don't know why this
I
is
think
in the back of my
the
head.
tests that were here before we added this property, I think cover it, right? Because
Got
none
it.
of these ones here are going to be specifying it. So I'm sort of implicitly testing the case of it not specified with these existing tests.
Makes sense.
So those still continue to work. So um real quick before we get carried away, let's real quick give ourselves some constants to play with so that we don't have to do this waddiness inside of here. So uh public const string enum value. Boom. Right? So we want I think we have a use static, don't we? Do we not? Hmm. I'm somewhat tempted to do this. Right? Because now I can do that. How does that make you feel?
I think I'm fine with it in this case because we're the fact that we're using constants and it's not actually referencing a
Yeah, for
property.
using static is one of those I use it very, pun intended, very sparingly.
Yeah,
But
because
it
my normal complaint is I don't know where the member is that you're whether the member is local to the class you're in or if it's somewhere else. But in this case, because it's a constant, I don't really care.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay. So that works here. We will run into a problem with this logic the moment somebody adds yet one more like enum parameter. Like this will no longer work. But to be fair, we have the same issue here. The moment somebody else adds a type parameter, this thing falls apart. So
type parameter.
so if somebody were to, on our attribute, go and put in another property that accepts a type, it falls apart. Oh, Izzy, what is using static? Ah, great question. This was added in C# 9, 10. Trying to remember. Ooh. This is I got this. Come on. Why is it not showing up? Static using. Using.
I think it was C#6. I think it was really old, wasn't it?
It could be.
7?
See, this is why I need our search to be better, so it
6 or
doesn't
7.
stuck. So short version is the
Future stream. If only this code was open source, so we could like I don't
fix
know,
it. Well,
fix it.
we can fix it.
I think C#6. Don't quote me on that though.
Yeah. So the idea with using static is it's not that complicated. It literally lets you invoke static members of the type without specifying the class name in front of it. Because normally I'd have to type AutoMock dot and put this in. And if you do a using static, it says, well, let's just assume that all of the static members of this type are available to me directly inside my type. Now, obviously, you can shoot yourself in the foot with ambiguity if you try to do using static with things that have matching member names. That's a problem. Don't do that. But it's more often the problem with it is it makes it unobvious where it's coming from, right? So another common one that I usually don't mind too much is like system.guid, right? So now down here, I can literally go guid g gets new guid, right? Because I can now access the new GUID method off of this GUID class without specifying GUID.newGUID. And this,
Console's the other one sometimes I like.
oh yeah, so that I can see that. Like there's a handful of these things that as long as it doesn't kill your readability, and based on context, like if you're building a console application, like if you see a write line method, it's not that bad to assume that, oh, this write line method is going to system.console. Not bad. So it is definitely a way you can make your code unreadable, but used well, it can also save a bit of typing and reduce some of the noise, because do people really need to see console dot write line, or is write line itself good enough? Okay, great. If write line itself is good enough, make my code cleaner. Excellent. Always happy that there's something new. Yeah. So in this case, let's just drop in using static to be able to go through and do it. Great question. Okay. Okay, so I think those were the only places we put in the magical strings, though. So I think I've handled that.
Do you want to be able to change your test strings to be interpolated and use name of, or use them to use the constants there?
What would that look like? Not sure.
In the test, you're using string literals. I'm wondering if you want to use interpolated strings so that when we probably rename this later, you don't have to you could just do a control F search, but
Oh, because of this?
no, yeah, not in there. I'm talking about like in the actual test generated tests where you're, yeah,
Oh,
down.
oh, I see. So you're talking about changing these ones up. I don't think this one actually has. Having learned something new, I can go back to bed now. I mean, you can. This. Oh, it does
It does
reference.
not have a
It
reference.
does reference it. So you're right. We could. We could get away with doing. Oh. Ooh.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, we start to get into some weird, interesting cases. I don't know if
It
I
was
can.
mostly meant to make your rename easier, but I think Control F will do it too, as long as you remember.
Yeah, and actually, you make a good point. Before we get too carried away, we should finalize some naming here. I think so. Couple questions to answer. Is skip the right word or is ignore the right word? Does
Try ignore. I think the general, when think of Microsoft naming stuff, they usually use ignore over skip. Skip usually implies you have a collection and you're moving along it. Ignore usually means I'm avoiding a behavior.
It's true, though one could argue the parameters list is a collection. But that is leaky abstraction letting the details of this come up. But to some degree, I would argue the users of this should have a concept of what it's doing, that it's checking their parameters. Um, and
I
is
think we might want the word parameters in here somewhere, potentially.
ignore nullable parameters. Is that
And I don't know if
clear?
that covers the full case because we don't actually just do nullable parameters. We also do, wait, didn't we do a case?
We ignore nullable.
If if it's nullable or your default value is null, those are the two cases we handle. Because if you have a non-nullable string, but you set your default value to null, you were kind of expecting you've done something weird and you're in pre-nullable land, right? That'd be my expectation at least.
Correct. Yeah, Izzy. So the idea here is that ignore in this case means the source generator will not generate a test for it. So
For
uh,
that specific parameter.
yes. Oh, I was going to show the test, and I'm clicking on the generator. So for example,
The
your
X unit one might be slightly clear.
yeah, we can go up there. So if we go,
You just get some coloring.
yeah. So for example, in this case, it's generating out for the constructor tests, and the idea here is it shouldn't generate a test for here or here
I'd
because
argue there's a third case, which is a comma string equals null if you put a fourth parameter on.
sorry, comma string
Whatever you want to, yeah.
like like that.
Yeah.
I think we actually handle this case.
I do too. I just think those are the three cases. I can't think of any other maybe a value type,
We did
global value type.
we didn't test value types, but we'll go write a test for that. I don't think it'll be
I
that
think
different from string. I think it's probably already working.
I think it's already covered too. I just think those are the four cases. I can't think of anything else that we would not want to generate a test for. I think these are four valid cases because the fourth case there is A, you're doing something weird or you have nullability not turned on, and in which case this would be expected.
Because you're talking about that, right?
Yep.
So in all of those,
I'm also now wondering if we want to put this in a nullable disable context just for the sake of string foo, not having an extra, not having the null bang afterwards. Would that mess us up with our,
I think we should go write a test to check it. I don't because these are like our end to end tests.
yeah, totally, no, totally agree. I was just curious is when we break apart the parameters, is it the fact that it's a null bang versus just a null because of the fact that we have nullability turned on? Does that make a difference when we parse it out?
So the one thing the because we explicitly look for the default value of the null literal, I don't think the bang makes a difference on whether this is interpreted as the null literal or not. So the fact that we're looking at that, I think both. Now I think we should write a test, but I suspect both cases are covered. Now, but going back here, if we make the enu member name called ignore nullable parameters, would you read all if I was to ask you to identify the nullable parameters, would you identify all four of these as nullable parameters? Does that name
I
make
think
sense?
I would not interpret line 9 as that. I don't think.
You would not interpret that as a nullable parameter. So then maybe the name isn't as good as
What
it
do you
could.
think?
It's hard because I kind of agree with you. And I'm trying to turn off knowing the implementation that we just wrote and make my brain stop.
This is where Copilot comes in, Kevin. Bing chat.
Yeah, we don't need Bing Chat. I've got Copilot. Do I not GitHub Copilot Chat? Launch. There. What
I
is
always struggle
a
to find it in
good
there.
name for something that describes all four of these parameters? Now, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this.
Also, I didn't know that the pound sign, you could reference files. It's Copilot. That was news to me.
Oh, really? Oh, this thing up here is what you're talking about?
Yeah, but like even in the inline chat.
Optional string parameters. Okay. Okay. Copilot? No.
That I would argue that doesn't cover line 7.
I correct, or heaven forbid line 10, the one that's named int. I
Well, you could argue that's an optional parameter.
Yes, but it wants to name it optional string parameters. I could get on
That is
board with
true.
optional parameters and going, okay, yeah, maybe. Maybe, but okay. So, despite the fact that Copilot is clearly an idiot, yeah. I am wondering though, optional might make a good addition here.
Ignore nullable or optional parameters.
The only thing I hate about that is you
It's
use the word
verbose.
or in that, and I
I
hate the
totally
word
agree.
or.
I totally agree. Ignore. How do you say or without saying or?
The problem is you still want a functional or even if you put a different word on it.
Because it really is an or case. Otherwise, I'd say we could do something like optional nullable parameters, but it's really it's
We did handle functionally an or when we were detecting the parameter. I don't ignore optional nullable parameters.
that somewhat seems to imply an and to me. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, the problem is I don't see it. I don't see it playing nice. I guess the other thing to be aware of though is this is an opt-in behavior. This isn't something somebody's going to get by accident. So, you know what? What if we do this? What if we do this? Uh, JC suggests the word default in there as well. Yeah, I can see
the
it.
only hesitancy with default is that we have a default, and so it seems to conflict a little.
Yeah. So, what if we cheat and just try to cover it in the documentation?
I'm fine with that.
Let's see. Control the behavior of the test generator. Allow skip nullable parameters. See, it's doing
Okay,
better.
Copilot, I have not seen you do this well with what is going on, Copilot? You always let me down with this stuff.
See, I typed the word the and it did the rest. Here, you want to see how well it does here? Hey, Copilot, do it. Okay, less impressive. Less impressive. Um,
The parameter is a nullable reference type. Well, it's not a reference, it's a nullable type.
type is
It's nullable. It's not really because ints you can have
how
nullable.
about
So
nullable reference types are enabled, and the parameter type is the nullable reference type, right? Because that was directly something we checked in
okay.
our if condition, right? Okay, Copilot.
Yes.
Nullable value
Except you
types
can't
are
really
enabled.
you can't really. Is everyone gonna have that not enabled? What are you running on C sharp 1.0?
I think even in 1.0, nullable of T was a thing. Like that is, yeah.
It just wanted to
The
put out to a question mark yet.
parameter has a default value of null, right?
Yep.
Those are the only two cases, right?
And value types. If you have a nullable value type.
Uh, well, but this one that falls into this case here, right? Whether it's value or reference type.
No, what I'm saying is if you just have an int question mark without a
Oh,
default value, what do you think? I think that's another case.
that is certainly a case, and one that I agree we should not gen a test for. We should go write a test because
And then if I was going to be nitpicky, I'd say we should switch the bottom line of that summary with the second line.
you can be as nitpicky as you'd like. So you want to do that.
Yeah, because I think one's talking about nullable reference types, nullable value types, similar kind of thing, and the last one is
Okay. We may go through. I believe the XML docs actually have a thing for bulleted lists.
I'll
So we
check.
may, yeah. If you want to find that real quick, I'm gonna go add the test for nullable of int. Right. So parameter with nullable value type. Let's see. Wablig says I think it's list and li as the options. Oops,
List sounds right to me.
I copied it the wrong place. I can check it here in just a second. If I plug it in, it'll light up. But I want to write this test real quick. Parameter with nullable. Let's see, value type does not generate test. So this guy here, and what we are proposing is int, and I'm going to just change this to age so it's mildly more interesting. All of that should be the same. We don't care about the state of nullability. That should be what that looks like. Okay. See how that goes. Come on, green circle. Oh. It gave me a,
Naming problem?
well,
Nope, that's actually made it.
it gave me a diagnostic error, which means I've probably got a compilation here. Oh, I've broken all of our tests because
Oh yes, this is the whole.
this was kind of what we were just discussing a moment ago. Of hey, let's rename our enum member and then let's not go fix it in all the tests. So there was that. Let's see. So
I would just select solution, honestly, at this point.
oh, that's a good point. Entire solution rename.
Nice.
Concerns me that it didn't
I
land.
thought there was more inside the
Yeah, it
generator
concerns me
thing.
that it didn't find that one, and it didn't find this one, And that should be all of them, I think. Make sure it compiles.
Maybe in your syntax, you updated the one in your syntax receiver, right?
Well, now it
You changed all those to enums.
Yes.
I mean, not enums, const, sorry. It's because you have two constructors inside your other one. This is the error build error I was talking about.
Oh, sorry. Did you already push a thing for this or no?
Yeah.
Oh, I should just pull your change is what I heard. Pull. Conflict. I'm going to take your side of the conflict. And yeah, sure, fine. I don't really want that. Delete stash, thanks. Okay, so this should now build properly. Huzzah. Okay, now if we go back to our test explorer, just gonna rerun all to sanity check. Okay, and it works just fine. I'm surprised it works just fine without us changing any code.
For nullable value types.
Yeah, why did that work? I don't know. This is why tests need to start red, because I don't know why. I now want to grab this and look at it because I don't understand how that passed.
Is it because of the annotated fact? The fact that it's annotated?
I don't think so because I explicitly got rid of the pound nullable enabled at the beginning.
Yeah, but isn't it?
And
What version of .NET are you running? Isn't that default? Isn't nullable value types default?
not for this because you have to
So this is like lower level than we're just running in standard .NET 8.
this is like we're invoking the Roslyn compiler by hand. So all the niceties that you might get from like the MS Build SDK, yeah, those aren't here.
I'm like, I don't even know how to turn off nullable value types in a normal project.
I mean, in the CS project, just nullable disabled is the easy way to do it.
Well, that's for value type. That's for reference types.
Right.
I don't
Well,
think that does value types.
value types you can't turn it off, but I'm surprised that because I didn't think any of our which one of these because it's clearly landing on one of these.
So I think it's laying on the bottom one because it
Nullable
still has the
annotate.
annotation. It knows that it has a question mark at the end.
Oh.
My only question for you, Kevin,
My brain
is
was
there a way
not
to write it without?
I don't think you can.
I think annotated is a pretty widespread. It just works unless you literally write nullable int or nullable string. You basically do the compiled version, but that'd actually be interesting. Would that break if you did nullable?
Yeah, I was about to say. Now I want to test that because you're proposing this, right?
Yeah,
I bet you that fails. There's no
because
way.
it's no
There's no
longer
way it
technically
catches.
annotated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally fails. Do we care?
How hard? I'm kind of curious. When we get in there, is there some other thing we could just be grabbing?
Oh, we can look at the type. So
I'm just curious. If we stop there, I'm just curious what it has in
we
this
can
case.
get the symbols type. Like
That's true.
so we could go through. Now, bear in mind,
I'm
it's going
wondering
to
if
be a
it has an
check for
easy thing though.
generic. I don't think it's going to have something easy. I think it's literally going to be we dive into this sucker's type and pull it apart. I don't think there's going to be a shorthand for this because I don't think, yeah, noble annotation, none. I think you're going to end up hunting it from generics and then hunting it out as you would any other
Like a
generic
type
type.
check.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't type check like you normally would. You have to
Containing type. Wait, no. Containing type is null. Wait,
containing type. Where do you see?
goes down a little bit. Keep going. There. Underlying type. I thought that was a containing type too somewhere. I know
Uh,
now.
oh, that's tuple underlying
Hey,
type.
where was the containing type? I
'Cause,
saw it somewhere.
yeah,
Not a big
well,
deal.
because you're going to end up falling into um, pulling this
You have to
apart.
look up in the AST.
Well, you end up looking at the type itself and going for an open generic and saying, hey, is the type of this thing the open generic nullable of T? If so, blah blah blah. Treat it the same way. I I I don't know if I care. I don't remember the last time I saw somebody write nullable of T rather than putting a question mark on something.
I totally agree. Now, would it be fun to write? A little, but no, I don't think it's necessary.
I don't know if that's actually a requirement from anyone.
I agree. If people are doing that, does AutoMocker even work if they're on that old of a thing that they don't have question mark?
Well, I don't
I
think there.
doubt it.
I don't think there's a version of C sharp that um, ever had that. I think C sharp 1.0 had nullable value types.
It had nullable value types, but I don't think it had nullable question marks. I
Oh,
think
you
that came
think you had
in
to do
null C
nullable
sharp
of T?
2.0.
Oh, okay. That I could potentially give you. Okay. Are there any other cases we want to write a test for?
What was our Xena ones?
Uh,
'Cause I think we covered pretty much all of them in
yeah.
that.
Good question. Let's just run the whole suite. Like I love that we ran the 182 unit test inside of AutoMocker in 300
Crazy
milliseconds,
amount of times.
and the generator took nearly 10 times as long for
Oh, I
9.
was right. Nullable value types were introduced in C sharp 2.0, so C sharp 1.0
All
did not
hail.
have.
Did not
So
have the.
nullable did not exist in C sharp 1.0.
I think we can conclude no one is running C sharp 1.0 and referencing the latest version of AutoMocker with source generators. Because that
But isn't that your
posits somebody
dream?
with a compiler new enough to run source generators and targeting Lang version 1.0. I don't even think you can set your Lang version that old.
There's what have you tried it?
No. Okay, this is failing, but this is failing because of the int that I added. Right? So I think
Did we expect to be able to handle the end? Unless I'm missing what you're saying.
um the we can handle the int. We just have to do a
Oh.
mocker use because again, it doesn't have a resolver that knows how to resolve ints, right? So
Have we covered a non-nullable that we did the negatives. Did we do a positive of if it's a non-nullable value type?
uh,
Do we need to?
um I think we can let these integration tests cover that case.
Great.
Oh, and when you do a use and register the type, register the right type.
So do we want to make two while we're at it, just because you'll need the other one for the other case?
Oh, a non-nullable int
Yeah.
there, so that one works. Um, I need another good number besides 42 for all my random numbers. When I was first in college, one of my professors, he would actually have the students, he'd say random number, and he would just expect you to be able to do random string of numbers as fast as you could go. And he expected legit random. Like if you weren't throwing in negatives and bouncing all over the number line, you were doing something wrong.
Do you have to stay with whole numbers?
Usually it was just integers. He didn't usually go for floats or anything wacky because that would be mildly insane. Let's see. So we're gonna do uh, age and then years. I don't know. I have no idea what any of this references. Right. So years needs to go up here, right? Because we have to have the optional things at the end. Oh, and then that goes like that. That goes like that. Testable name. You were assigning those things into properties. Is that necessary?
That was me just trying to set up my.
Yeah.
I was trying to sample my
Argument null exception. Throw if null. For people who haven't seen this
name.
before, this is the new hip way of checking for null and throwing. Pro tip.
Can you force null into int? I don't think you can because they just come out with the default value.
So here's the fun part. Do you know what null is?
A
If you were
point in the
asked to,
memory.
if you were asked to define what null is, what is null defined as?
A point in memory
0.
for int.
Null is 0. Yeah.
For
Labla
int
got
it's
it too.
0,
No,
but
no. In the runtime, null is defined as 0.
show me this.
The zero pointer. I will have to look it up. But real quick, the throw if null,
That's
caller
interesting.
argument expression. This is one of the coolest things because I was showing some colleagues this the other day. Is you obviously that the way they implemented this is you'll notice it takes the two parameters. It can now throw an argument null exception with the appropriate param name because that is important. That is important. If we look at our analyzer and our generator, come on.
Does yours actually check that the name is correct as well as the...
Of course it does. If you're going to throw an argument exception, darn it, you should specify the param name properly.
Don't you wish that there was parameter null checking features?
Yeah.
That in the past couple of days, I've been really missing that.
Why is this thing not generating tests? I mean, it clearly generated tests.
So when I was doing this earlier, I don't know if I was looking in the wrong place, but I couldn't get them to actually generate out. I was having to expose out the generated files via project prop element.
This view here is often problematic. I do not like this view. It causes me no end of problems. But yes, echoing them out is fine. I'm curious why this thing's now failing. Expected type of, see, if I click here, oh, because it
String
doesn't know
one.
about it, it's not going to go. No exception was thrown. Throws null exception with null string. Oh, so it does count for you.
Oh, then it's happy. So string one, nullable name. I thought we covered that.
Yeah, I wanna now debug, like, I'm gonna close some of this stuff up so I don't have to deal with all of it. Let's see, test explore, thank you, debug. I want to see why name.
Huh? Yeah, that's right. Wait, why is it empty? Is it empty string?
It is empty string. There's
Why is it
there.
empty string? Is it because your mocker's putting in an empty string?
Well, hold on. I'm wondering if your suggestion of dealing with year, because you'll note it's looking for param name years.
Oh.
With null string 1 throws argument null exception. Something is off here.
What's
So
years again?
this test is correct.
Oh, years is the last one we did.
Yeah. So
And that's
you'll
not actually a
note
string. Wait, that's an int.
it is smart. This is what I mean where it's smart enough to not crash out.
Conflict.
Yeah. The problem is it came up with string and then checked the
Maybe
wrong
int.
parameter. That's interesting.
Oh, because it's checking age instead of years.
Let's see. Hold on. No controller. Because it's going name, default int.
No, the thing all the way on the right, age.
Yeah, but age it pulled back a
Oh,
value
got it, got it,
for.
got it. Yep, you're right.
Boo. Test name. Nullable name.
This can't. This shouldn't generate a test though,
So it's passing. It's passing
because
default to the
default int is going to be 0.
right, and so
So we shouldn't be
so
generating test.
correct. So we are not properly handling the
Non-nullable,
we're not handling the value type case.
non-nullable value type.
Yeah. So
Is
how
that a double entendre? Non-nullable value type.
well, I think this is easy though. I because once again, I think we can just go right into here. So, okay, shoot. I wasn't going to make us write a unit test, but darn it, now we're writing a unit test. Because clearly we've just identified a case that was not caught by our unit test and only caught by an integration test. So we should probably write a unit test. Mostly so I can debug it easier.
I feel good that I thought of this case. Man,
Parameter with value type does not generate test. Wait, should this one... So no value type gets a test generated.
a nullable. Yes, that's true.
No
Wait,
value type
yeah.
gets a test generated. Just going through the rules as we've outlined them, right?
Do you agree? I can't think of a case if I'm building a library. I can't think of a case where I have a value type that I'm ever going to throw an argument null exception.
And I'm gonna
And
propose it
yeah,
doesn't matter the state of that enum, right? Regardless of
yes,
whether that
totally agree.
enum is set or not. So I'm gonna delete the enum setter from this test as well, and we're just gonna do this, right? This should fail, and it should show a diff where it's generated a test, right? So, and it worked flawlessly, and the unit test passed. And what the heck?
Is it because of some if condition, I
Well, hold
guess?
on.
Where's the specific?
Let's go back. Let's turn this guy on. Right? There's a failure in here somewhere, and I don't know where yet. Is the failure case with the enum set? No, that skips as well.
Is it when you have a first parameter of something, if you put string first before the int, because that, remember, it's doing string one and it was getting confused
Oh, that's a good
with the
point
naming?
because it messed up. So you think if I do string name,
No, just int age, then I think that should be sufficient.
okay.
It's going to generate 2 tests, so we're going to have to.
Nope, neither should generate a test. Right? Non-nullable string.
No, the first one should. That's a non-nullable string should generate a test.
Ah, good. Fair. Okay, so let's look at the diff. So that only did the string one.
What's your X unit one again?
The X unit one has all the things.
Because we're looking for years.
And you
What's
know, we could do because
the
it's
full thing?
yeah, we could do the whole thing if we wanted, right? So I could come up here, and what I could do is I can just grab this.
Also, I could probably rename that to not be controller string, but that was my initial thing that was going on.
Yeah, that might be nicer, but let's like part of the reason for some of the naming up there is so that it copies and pastes nicely into here. So this
You're gonna have to remove string off controller.
cute. Let's run this test now because this will obviously fail because we expect some test. But let's see what tests it.
I hope so. I hope it obviously fails.
Okay. Let's see. So controller could not be found. Are you missing a directory reference? What did I do wrong when I copied this in?
You do also need nullable enable.
I shouldn't.
Because we're using nullable reference types.
Oh, that is a good point. Thank you. So let's do pound that. Public class controller. Oh,
Are you using
I
a
draw.
primary constructor?
Yeah.
Well, not even. Ooh, that is interesting. Will it work for a primary constructor?
Yes, yes, and I know this because there was a bug that came in the other day where a user was asking about primary constructors, and so I intentionally wrote a bunch of tests around primary constructors. It ended up not being the primary constructors ended up not being a bug, but I resolved it by putting in just a bunch of tests.
I mean, Kevin, what's all this extra code we're doing? We could just use a primary constructor.
Well, but I'd have to change the underlying lang version on it.
Got it.
But there are tests now.
What is the underlining lang version?
Oh, for the this guy? I don't remember. What did we set it to? Let's see.
With language version
Yeah, where do you see that?
46.
46. Language version. Lang version
Default.
default. Latest
0.
supported.
So that would be supported.
Yeah, so look at that. I didn't realize that they actually decorated out a lot of the stuff that was included.
Hey, Kevin, that's how you do a bullet list, by the way.
Hey, look at that. That's how you do a bulleted list. I'm just gonna pin that real quick. Okay. Let's look at the output of this. Okay, did we get the same? Okay, so we got the same output. That's good.
Yes.
The test is replicating the bad.
I do kind of want to break this down. Like, let's remove some parameters because I'm really curious on under what condition it's actually doing this.
Okay, so I'm going to propose that I can get rid of at least this much, and it shouldn't make a difference.
The fact that it's falling over on year, I'm confused.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet it's got to be in these first three parameters. I'm willing to bet we still get the two tests generated.
Okay, so there's a failure.
Okay, so we do get the two tests. Okay, so good. It is in the first three parameters. Okay, can I do just Webley, have a good night. See you. Well, I don't know if you'll see me at work tomorrow. I won't be in the office, but I will be online. Okay, let's go here. And let's see this. I feel like this is the exact test we had just a second ago with int string. Isn't it?
That is the same,
Interesting.
but there we go.
So
How the heck is it grabbing the third one before the second?
something about this is messing it up.
That also would explain why it needs a third one, and it interprets the second one as a string. It named the test as a string, but
Yeah.
it's checking for years.
Okay, so I'm gonna indent this.
Wow, we just found an edge case.
I mean, this is why we write tests. Okay, so let's catch it in the thing again.
I
Because
bet this existed before even we started writing these changes.
yeah, and I'm willing to bet it has to do with the duplicate types. Magnus, thanks for the sub. Let's see here. So, symbol coming in is of string. I'd like to have the name pin to go with it. Do that. Eric, thanks for the sub as well. Okay, so let's grab the name of this guy. Where are you? I would like to know your name. Wow, what is going on? Ruchin, also thank you for the sub. Everybody's coming in tonight. Oh, there it is. Name. It was cleverly hidden under the property name of name. Okay, so this one makes sense, right? We come in. Is nullable as false for name. That
That's true.
aligns with what we have. Okay, great. Next. Years. Is nullable as false. Also true.
But it should not. It should not generate a test here.
Let's see. Can you suggest a project that will look good For cover letter. That's a good question. Let me think on that one for a minute. Cosmic. I am not sure. Nullable is true. Okay.
Spreadsheet application. That was one of my little ones I did one point in time.
Yeah.
Little WPF app with having to do like event firing and updates and handling reference cells. That's a complicated.
There is on there is a project I was where is it? Oh, what is his name? The AWS Cloud Bard guy. I am blanking on his name and I want his name. He has a great project where it's Forest Brazil. That's right. That's what I'm looking for. He has a cloud resume challenge. Um,
Have you seen this?
uh, Here. This is what I'm looking for. Yeah. Um, this guy here. This is. There is a. I want the. There is a. Yeah. There's a GitHub for this as well. Yeah. This. So. Um. Something in this vicinity I would propose doing, or something similar. This somebody who goes through this is I think looks very good on a resume. And even if you don't do all of it, right? Some amount of this is perfect. Is it demonstrates proficiency. In this case, this is an Azure one, right? There's an Azure one, there's an AWS one, there's ones with Python or similar. The language doesn't matter as much as demonstrating a certain amount of proficiency with pushing stuff up to the cloud. So something to that effect. Let's see. Build your own Docker. Oh dear heavens, what have you shared with me?
No, no. This is build your own X. That just happens to be the thing at the top. So you can choose whatever you want in whatever language. So if you scroll down a bit, keep
Oh,
going. So like build your own 3D render and it has it in different languages. So you can choose kind of what you want to build. And it has a bunch of different languages for how to build that thing.
this is
Like
interesting.
command line.
Hang on. Put that in my star list. I might need to go back and look at that. That's pretty cool. But yes, that cloud skills challenge, if you're intentionally looking for something to put on a cover letter, that is a worthwhile one to do. Okay, so this guy found its parameters.
If you manage to build your own Docker, you will be ahead and beyond.
Yes, that is probably that's why when I saw that I was like, that might be a little deep. Okay, we want to go back to our generator. Also, this is one of the things that's probably bad about this generator. Usually, I would move all of this code generation stuff not here, rather than having it be all just here. Okay, so let's look at
Like you'd be putting in another method.
something outside of this source generator so that there's a separation between code that's generating it and the thing that's interacting with the source generator library.
Probably makes it harder to test too.
Um, yeah, potentially. Okay, so nullable parameter index
Oh, this is also from this is
0.
me.
What?
That was I wrote that line 45, 44 through 48, so something may be weird with it.
Well, I
I
edited
remember.
it. You had
That's true.
element to add, so I'll take a little bit of responsibility. So, if the thing is on, because the behavior that we're seeing is expected if somebody just uses it blindly, but we have the feature on. So this checks is nullable.
Mm,
I
No, because
wonder
it's
if we
still
should.
int. Remember, it's still an int. It's failing on the years case, which is an int, and we never want to generate tests either case for int.
Yeah, so this one here is generating up um for the first one. So that one we don't care about. This one we care, right? So this is parameters sub 1. Parameter sub 1, we should really do a debug thing. Int, right? This is coming through and it's
Ah,
non-nullable. Okay.
wait,
Like it I agree. It is not nullable.
it's true.
So
It's type
this is a
int.
bad this is potentially a bad check, right? Of I think what I almost want to do, skip nullable parameters.
Can we just skip value types? Can we have that as a blanket check at first? Because I think this works for all reference types.
Right. I think that is a thing, but so I think I agree with you, and I think what we want is the following code. Because we never had like this is a bug before we got here. Is value type. Right? We never want to generate a test for a value type. Is that true though? Yeah, yes, it can we do not want to generate a thing for a value type because we're explicitly asserting on argument null exception. It doesn't make sense. Right? It does not make sense if it's a value type. So we just need to parse out is value type here. Right? So
Yeah,
public
because if it's nullable, then we assume that the developers handled it. If it's not nullable, it's going to have a default value. It's not going to be null. You can't shove null into a value type.
Yeah, well, and the test doesn't shove in null to its own credit. It shoves in default of type. But
That is true.
but
Except that's
it
zero in this case.
well and it's not let's see. This needs to be equals true. But even though that compiles, the expectation is still an argument null exception. You shouldn't be throwing argument null exception on default of int. So, like, that's just like out of range? Sure. Like, that type of stuff is legit. So, I think just blindly blanking on all value types is probably the. Wait, is that seriously an API? Oh, look at that.
Wow.
Thank you, Copilot.
You need to debug.
I almost had to think for myself and like find the API. And now we'll see if it works.
That was so like 2022. Come on. Dang it.
No, well, no, this is
Oh, wait.
correct.
No, that's one
This is
test. That's
correct.
fine.
One test. This we didn't update our expectation. So this one here is with null string, right? AutoMocker setup. I'm a little confused though. Oh, this is fine. This is fine.
It looks good to me.
Well, I was just noticing that there wasn't an assert here.
Oh, yes, that is a detail.
Well, but that is actually somewhat expected. So it attempts to, and this is something that I actually like, and it's not something that's actually tested. Is it attempts to detect your unit test framework based upon your referenced assemblies, and so it will only based upon the detected framework, it'll decorate your methods accordingly when needed. Right? And it will generate appropriate assertions. If none of those are available, it still generates the method with the idea that if you're using some other testing framework, you can still call that method. Right? You do the wiring up to make your test call it, but it'll still gen all the methods for
By
you.
magical string?
By whatever means you want to invoke the method by.
Sounds ugly. You'd probably have to like expose out generated code at the end of the day.
Well, right, but if you think of the way you would do it in XUnit, like ignoring the fact that this is going to cause a duplicate test, right? If pretend rather than fact, I'm typing in Kevin's thing, you know, public void foo, right? I can still do this and invoke it, which is slightly better than
Won't it have a compile layer?
no,
'Cause it hasn't existed until you compile?
no. That's why I was saying earlier how source generators have to be tolerant of code coming in that may not compile yet. That was one of the big things with source generators is the ability to work with code that doesn't work quite yet.
So this will compile?
I don't know if I have the method name right, but we can double check it.
It's not that big a deal. I was just curious.
But yes, you can go through and stupid here. Actually, I think I know how to fix this. Unload, reload, forces it to reparse itself and think. Because otherwise, if you weren't able to do it, see, this dot it, it is possible. I promise. I promise. I promise. I promise. I'm not just making this up. Where is my analyzers? See, this one has it. All right. So, for example, I go into a project where I can actually see the stupid thing working. All right. So I can do test method public void foo. Then I can just invoke that method. Right. So
And then I can do an assert afterwards.
no, you don't need to do an assert because, well, yes, I guess you would need to actually do it because no, well, it depends because the non-unit testy framework as well will throw an exception. So you might have to do an assert depending on how your unit test framework handles it. Most of them unhandled exception is the way it works. So
It's just gonna be a failure.
yeah, but it's one of those. It's like so far we haven't had anybody complain about wanting insert other unit test framework here.
I will create my own unit test framework.
I mean, there's a chance the new. I'm curious how the new Microsoft
Ooh, the
runner.
new MS test.
The thing is the way it works in order to be able to go fast is it drops reflection in favor of source generators. So it's
So you think it'd be pretty hip?
I think it's hip to source generators. That's source generators allowed them to get rid of reflection. And that's how they've squeezed out every inch of performance and things that otherwise would have sucked.
See, this is what Copilot's giving them. AI is giving them ideas like this.
Let's see. Okay, so parameter with value type does not generate tests. So I think
But should generate tests. It should generate one test for
yeah,
name.
I'm trying to decide. I think what we want to do. So I think what I want to do here is I want to do int age because I think
Except when we did that initially, that didn't cause our X.
agreed, but I think what I want to do is I want to have two tests, right? I want to have one. I want to leave this test as is for
Yes, I agree
the
with that.
value type, and then one. I need to stop doing that. I copied from the wrong place. I want to do this one to cover the standalone int case, and then I'll change the other one up to handle it because I think there's value in having both. Again, not that I expect people to be doing this that much. Let's see. That goes like that. That goes like that. Don't care
I
about
love writing these kind of tests though, where it's just like slight modifications in these weird edge cases.
with um what how do we write the name of this? Generation
Uh, fix bug.
generation parameter
Doesn't handle